Okay, we're live. What's up, man? What's up, guys? I should say. Yeah, it's 3:19 in the morning here, and I'm gonna get 5 hours of sleep before I sign on for work. But anyway, yeah, Tenkaichi 4, right? Yeah, it's kind of a bit weird. Like it's almost like it hasn't even like settled in for me. Yeah, I don't even know where I want to begin. I guess well, yeah, I woke up this morning. Yeah, or not this morning. I woke up this afternoon because I've needed sleep for a while, but work's a killer. But yeah, I woke up this afternoon, and then my friend, like, I was just talking with him, right, and he just replied like Budokai. He just replied, and I was like, wait, what? That's a weird response. Budokai, what the fuck? And that got me thinking, like, did they announce something for like on Twitter or some shit? And so I go to Twitter and like it only takes like a couple seconds to go there, like maybe like 10, 15 seconds or something, but just open up a new tab and go in, right? But I was just thinking like, did they announce a new game or some shit? I don't, right? Like I feel like if they did, like more people would be blowing up my phone anyway. So I go in and then I don't see anything like on my timeline, and then I look to the right and I see like the search and I see Tenkaichi 4. And at this point, I'm thinking like, the fuck? Like, did it get announced or something? Because here's the things. Like, here's the thing, right? Like, things on your search can trend even when they're not real. Like if something like Budokai 4 trended, I wouldn't be like, is this real or not? I don't know, right? Anyway, but yeah, Tenkaichi 4 ended up trending, and I thought maybe because sometimes like Twitter, like anime fans, like they can do like these what if topics and what if tweets, and they can gain like thousands of retweets and thousands of likes and shit. And so maybe I thought it was one of those, and then I click it, and lo and behold, it wasn't. And looks like for the Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour event, which I don't even know what it was. I think is are there still fighters tourneys going on? I guess it's not. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, it's like 5 years into the game's life cycle, but like fighters life cycle. But yeah, I guess like they were doing some fighters event. I don't know what the event was. Maybe like a world tour or something, like what they do for Tekken or and for Guilty Gear Strive and shit like that. But I guess like at the end, like I don't even know who won, but they did some battle. Like they do this thing called the Battle Hour or something like that, which I guess is like game events. I think it is the game events. I remember watching like last year's too. Um, and yeah, then there was like a teaser for Tenkaichi 4 there, and then like yeah, and I saw the people in the crowd. It looked like it was like a fighting game tournament, some sort of tourney that was being held, and yeah, it was like yeah, that's all it was. It was just a teaser, and I guess since I've watched that teaser, like it hasn't really like settled in yet. I have thought about it honestly. Like I spent a lot of today kind of like not even thinking about it, to be honest with you, which is kind of surreal, right? Which is kind of weird for me, like who's like such like a big avid Dragon Ball fan. But it's a couple things, right? Like one, I was like playing Ishin a lot, uploading those boss videos and whatever to this channel. Then I also had to like work for 2 hours. Not that I needed to, but I was just getting like work done so that like my the rest of my work and the rest of my work week was I could manage that a little better. And yeah, I was just basically doing those two things for the majority of today, and then now it's actually now that I'm like sitting down and just like kind of like thinking about it. I mean, I was thinking about it before. I say I wasn't thinking about it, but I was in that space between like I'm not like fully invested in it, but I am going to be at some point. So it's like that weird like sort of like limbo space that I was in about it like all day, like that ambivalent phase. And yeah, I guess like the way that I'm feeling now is that a couple hours or like maybe 12 hours after the reveal is that I'm excited, but I'm cautious, and it's not, and I'm just trying to be as like temper my expectations a little bit, because here's the thing, like Tenkaichi is one of my favorite video game series in general, right? Forget the Dragon Ball aspect of it. I just think like when you talk about like what a game is and what a game should be, I think games like Smash Brothers, Tenkaichi, Mario Party, Mario Kart, like all those games which are like multiplayer games, and then you remember like back in middle school or elementary school, like bringing your friends to your crib or going to their crib and then turning the PS2 on and playing Tenkaichi games or GameCube games for like the Mario Kart and Mario Party stuff. Like that's nostalgic. Like that's when like friendships and like bonds are built, and that's how you like remember all the controls and shit. So there's like this extremely nostalgic childhood sort of like perspective to that, right? So and of course, coupled that with the fact that I think I love Dragon Ball, and the game itself I think is very decent. It's pretty decently made. You have like one of my favorite game series of all time. Which brings me to three things, three things that I'm looking for in this game, right? Or three things that I'm considering with this game. I still want to see more before I decide to buy it. And here's kind of like the first thing, right? The first thing is the main draw of this whole thing. The reason why they're even doing a Tenkaichi 4, and we're gonna call it Tenkaichi 4. Who knows if they call it something else? But in the teaser trailer, we clearly saw Super Saiyan Blue because Super Saiyan Blue Ku, I'm gonna call him Blue Ku, is pretty much the mascot. Like Super Saiyan Blue Goku is like the mascot for modern Dragon Ball. So the entire reason and pull of DBS or Tenkaichi 4, excuse me, is having DBS representation and DB Super inclusion, DB Super character inclusion. So this is like, okay, yeah, all the characters we brought back from 1, 2, and 3, we're gonna mix super characters in now. We're gonna have Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. We're gonna have Beerus. We're gonna have Super Saiyan Blue Goku, Ultra Instinct Goku, Super Saiyan God Goku, and Vegeta. The list goes on, right? And on one hand, and as everyone knows, I don't really care about Super, so it doesn't really move me, right? Then the inclusion of Super characters, I don't like Super, I don't care about Super, and exactly that, it doesn't really move me, right? But on the flip side of that is the idea that I can use the classic characters. I can use like Majin Vegeta, Super Saiyan 4 Goku Vegeta and Gogeta, Super Saiyan 3 Goku, even someone as, a little more lower in the scale like Zarbon or Dodoria, Android 17, Android 16, even Dragon Ball Part 1 characters like Mercenary Tao, Tambourine maybe. And when you think about Tenkaichi 1, 2, and 3, what was kind of like the draw of those games? It was just the insane roster. It was really the roster that like all these different characters can be included in the game. And DB Super has kind of like expanded the cast like 10 like millions, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's expanded it like quite a lot. So on one hand, like the first point is kind of like the inclusion of DB Super. Like I'm not really too excited about that, but on the other hand is that I can play classic characters, vintage Dragon Ball characters in 2023 in that engine, and well presumably in that engine and in that format. So that's exciting. That's exciting. And it's not like I'm like totally against Super. I mean, I'm sure they're going to include Beerus. I'm sure they're going to include Whis. I'm sure they're going to include some other characters like maybe like Ribrianne, which I will be looking to use. I'm sure they're going to include like Goku Black and Zamasu, who I'm not too interested in using. I'm not too interested in using Jiren. None of the Super Saiyan Blue forms, not Ultra Instinct. I don't really care about that. Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta, I'll consider, but maybe Vegeta. But anyway, point is like Super. I'm not. There's a couple characters here and there that I'll try out, and we'll see what happens with them. But that being said, the flip side of that is that I'll be very excited and interested to use the classic characters. But that kind of brings me like people kind of like anticipated this, right? Like people know me, like when I talk about Dragon Ball Super, when I talk about Dragon Ball, they care about my opinion. They know I don't like Super or anything, right? But I think even more than my dislike or like for Super, whatever it was, whatever my opinion on Super is, it's there's two bigger points than that. So remember, I said there's 3 points we got to consider. So the first one was like the inclusion of DB Super, which was obvious it was going to happen, right? If you're going to make a Tenkaichi game in 2023, then of course, it's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? But then that brings me to the two other points, which are more important for me. And the first is, how competitive is this game going to be? Because here's the thing about Tenkaichi back in the day. You had very limited online play for games back in the day. Tenkaichi 1, 2, and 3 came out on the PS2. 2005, '06, and '07. There was no online play for those games back then. You could play Tenkaichi on the Wii and then connect to the internet that way. But the core of that game was playing with your friends or playing through the story mode and going through those modes with your friends. And, going through the story and playing each other and just like using overpowered characters like Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Super Saiyan 2 Cell Games Gohan and, all these different characters, all these different Saiyans and Piccolo and whoever, right? And kicking ass with them, right? we're in a part of gaming where like it's online now. If there is going to be an online component to this, how interested am I going to be? And this is the second point. How competitive? What's the meta of this game? Because arena fighters traditionally, when you talk about fighting games, are not very good traditionally. There's really only good one out there. I'm speaking competitively speaking. Competitively, I'm talking about like true FGC meta. I'm talking like Street Fighter, Tekken, Guilty Gear, that sort of thing, right? And there's only one arena fighter that's like that, and it's not the Naruto Ninja Storm games. It's Dissidia Final Fantasy. Dissidia Final Fantasy is the only arena fighter out there that has some sort of like competent, viable, respected meta to it. You know what I'm saying? Is Tenkaichi 4 going to be a true fighting game or a true well, and again, arena fighters don't really they're not really like that, but is it going to attempt to be a true fighting game? Because if it's not, then I don't care to play the game online. I'm more than happy to play the game by myself, playing through story mode by myself. And that's only if the entirety everything else about the game, the music, which I'll talk about the music in a couple more minutes, the music, the story mode, the modes, like all these different things are worth it. Like I can invest myself into the game, right? Because when you talk about fighting games today, like the online component and even the single player component, but like the ability to fight other people in a fair, layered meta is so important. And if Tenkaichi 4 is not going to have that, then I'm not going to bother to go online and play online. I'm just not. It's, you know, I don't really care about that stuff. There's nothing like there for me. Like why would I go and play with a guy from France, for example? You know what I'm saying? Some random on France just to play that game. I would do that with a game like Tekken and like Virtua Fighter and stuff because there's some meta there. There's some competitiveness there. There's some like mechanics and understanding like Yomi and understanding like what's plus and minus on frames, that sort of thing, right? How to punish this, can I punish this, like there's that sort of like thinking that goes into it. But if that none of that's going to be in here, then I don't care for the online. I'm talking about purely the online. I don't care for like the online experience when it comes to that. So that's one thing I'm interested in, like how competitive is this game going to be? And that brings it back to my other point. When you talk about competitiveness in fighting games, whether it's Tekken, Soul Calibur, Street Fighter, Virtua Fighter, Guilty Gear, whatever, character roster, character roster is so important. Character roster is so important. One of the reasons why Tekken 7's, why I felt, well, a lot of people felt like Tekken 7, the kind of meta went kind of pretty much shit after once Season 3 debuted. Mine Akuma 2D characters, Akuma and Geese, buffs, and Fok and Leroy aside. One of the reasons people kind of felt like it went to shit was because, and what I noticed was that the roster size grew to above 50. Roster size is so important to keeping the balance of a game. A game like Tenkaichi 3, which I believe had 164 characters, if I'm not mistaken, which I think is like a Guinness World Record for the most characters in a fighting game, official fighting game. There's no balance in that. You can't make a balanced game with 164 characters. So, the question here is, are they going to go to like 1, 2, and 3, just include everyone and not give a fuck about balance? Or are they going to go for a more competitive, balanced fighting game, arena fighter, like what you got in Dissidia Final Fantasy? And I think there's three Final Fantasy Dissidia games, right? You have the original one, then you have Dissidia 02, Duodecim, I think it's called, and then you have NT, which is the latest one. And I think NT is actually supposed to be like a pretty good game. I don't think it's like at EVE. I think like it's on like one of like the smaller like EVA tourneys or something, but that's the thing, right? Are you just gonna go in all in on roster and say fuck the balance, or are you gonna actually try to make this competitive like fighters? And I wonder like what, because like here's the thing, right? Like fighters was so important because that was like the first competitive Dragon Ball game that we got like in such a long time. Budokai kind of had its thing, but that wasn't like to the level of like other games, like like Tekken, obviously like Tekken, Soul Calibur, and shit like that, right? And Tenkaichi was not about that. So that's what I'm wondering. Tenkaichi was never about that. Are they going to do that for this game? Because depending on that, That's going to dictate my experience with the game. So anyway, those are the two things, and then there's the third thing. Here's the third thing, and this is probably the most important thing out of the entire, like, all the points that I've talked about, right? I mean, all three of them are equally important to me, but at least for like someone who doesn't like or does who likes or doesn't like Dragon Ball in any respect, this third point is probably the most important. Who is developing? So we know Bamco is publishing it and they're developing it, but is Spike Chunsoft? Are they going to work? Are they going to be developing it? Right? Are they going to be developing it? Because here's the thing, Bamco Games for a while, you take out the FromSoft stuff, take out like all the FromSoft developed games, like all the Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro and Elden Ring now. Take all that out. Bamco Games have pretty much been shit for like quite like pretty much, all things considered. I mean, Fighters is probably an exception too, but that's more Arc System developed that, and FromSoft developed the Dark Souls games, right? So who is developing this, right? That's the question. Is it going to be Cryware, CC2? Is it going to be like Spike Chunsoft? Because Spike Chunsoft games as of late have been crap. They've been so trash. Jump Force, Spike Chunsoft did that. That game was disgusting. If we're gonna get that developer on Tenkaichi 4, that is that would be so disappointing, right? For at least maybe, and again, maybe not as disappointing for me because this is, I'm tempering my expectations with this, right? But for everyone else that you saw on Twitter being like, Tenkaichi 4 is real, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? Just remember, the developers of Tenkaichi's 1, 2, and 3 developed Jump Force, and that is what they are today. How are they going to develop Tenkaichi 4? If it's going to be them, which all sign, I'm pretty sure, I would assume it's going to be them, but if it's not, right, who is going to develop it? And if it's going to be them, are they going to be the shitty Chunsoft or not? Because they have not been a good developer for a long time, dude. And there's been a bunch of Dragon Ball Z games as of late that are just, I really don't care about. Xenoverse 2, I didn't even buy. I bought Xenoverse 1 because I was kind of like into the hype, but that was for PS3. I don't give a fuck about it anymore, right? So those are the three questions we got to consider, right? At least those are three things for me. DB Super inclusion, but that's offset by using classic characters. How competitive is the game going to be, and how is that going to play into the online capabilities? And 3, how is the development of the game going to be? Because if we're just going to get something like Kakarot and Xenoverse 2, then I'm out. I'm not going to play that shit, dude. I'm just being 100% honest. I mean, if it looks fun enough, I'll buy it. If it looks fun enough, I'll buy it. But yeah, but I mean, like, again, I guess initial reactions, minus everything that I said, just to say that Tenkaichi 4 is real is in itself a surreal thing. I think it's pretty surreal. It's a pretty surreal, like, thing to say that there's a new Tenkaichi coming out. And just FYI, in Japan, it actually wasn't called Tenkaichi, it was called Sparking. I think it was called Tenkaichi 1 was called Sparking, Tenkaichi 2 was called Sparking Neo, and then Tenkaichi 3 was called Sparking Burning, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember exactly what the third one was. I think it was maybe EX Raging, maybe? Not for Raging Blast, but I don't remember exactly what. But all things considered, I'm excited. I'm a little excited. I'm somewhat excited, but I'm also keeping my expectations very much in check. So, and I also said I'd talk about the music, right? The music of Tenkaichi 2 and 3. So many people say that Tenkaichi 2 has the best OST out of the 3. I somewhat agree. I think 2 and 3's for me are personally tied. Edge of Spirit and Tenkaichi 3 is, to me, the best Tenkaichi series song, easy. One of my favorite video game music pieces ever, right? So the music has to hit. Right? Fighter's music was good, but if you ask me which was better between Fighter's music and Tenkaichi 2 or Tenkaichi 3, I am taking Tenkaichi 2, Tenkaichi 3 easy, free, with the swiftness. If Tenkaichi 4's music can't live up to that, that would be so disappointing, because Tenkaichi, like, I've said this before, right? I'm a huge Kikuchi fan. right? When everyone else was like, praising Falconer and like, back in the day, I'm talking about like 10 years ago, saying like Falconer, oh, that's the only way to listen to it, right? I would tell people like Kikuchi, this is how you're supposed to experience Dragon Ball. That the subtitles, like everything, that is Dragon Ball, not what you watched when you was a kid. I understand like that's what you were exposed to as a kid, right? And I know like that's how you got into the series, but that's not what the series is actually about. It's this, it's Kikuchi, right? Okay, right? On the flip side, and maybe hypocritically on my part, I also think Falconer's music is better than what better than how sub fans put it down, right? I actually think Falconer's OST does work in some scenes with DB, specifically DBZ, right? But in that respect, I always kind of like prefer. I liked Kikuchi and Falconer the same, which is very like ironic for me and very strange for me. I don't think many people would expect that for me to say that. If I had to choose one, I would definitely pick Kikuchi. But generally speaking, I like those two scores around the same. But if there's one OST and one music score and one BGM, right? Just one overall score for Dragon Ball that I think captures the essence of the series the best. It is the Kenji Yamamoto and the Tenkaichi series. It's the video game music. The thing scored by Kenji Yamamoto in the Budokai series, even though he plagiarized it, and what we got from Toshiyuki Kishi in the Tenkaichi series. Okay? I feel like the action music and even some of the laid back music and the menu music and whatever, all like the like the slice of life scenes, if that's what you want to call it, all that stuff, and the battle action music, that's better than both the Falconer and the Falconer and the Kikuchi scores, generally speaking, right? That's just my opinion, right? The music of those games are so important. If the music of the game it just does not come up to that, that would be so disappointing. And Tenkaichi 1 actually reused music from the Budokai series. Tenkaichi 2 and Tenkaichi 3 I think were I don't remember if Toshiyuki Kishi was in Tenkaichi 1, but the music of the series was so important and Tenkaichi 4 has to get that musical. It has to get it. Because Fighter's music was good. Like there's some tracks here and there that I like. I think my favorite was probably like the Last Warriors track, maybe. But honestly, like if I were to pick like that, and what I'm talking about, Last Warriors, I think the track is called Last Warriors, and I think it's like the hero phase against like the final battle against Android 21 in one of like the story arcs, one of the story modes in Fighters. But that to me just can't hold a candle to like Edge of Spirit or Menace or Dark Half from Tenkaichi 2 or Morning Dew from Tenkaichi 2 or or the Heat or you know what I'm saying? Like all like these, I know these song titles like off the top of my head, right? The music has to come. It has to reach it because if it doesn't, that would be such a slight against the game, dude. It would be such a slight against the game, and it would be very disappointing. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. I just don't know. I mean, like, look, I'll never say never, but just I'm thinking about like the track records of Dragon Ball games and just like what I'm worried about and everything. I just don't think it can ever capture the magic of Tenkaichi 2 and Tenkaichi 3. I just don't have that faith. I don't. I just don't. I would love to be proven wrong. I would gladly shut the fuck up if it did. Lord knows I want a great Dragon Ball game, okay? I do. But at the same time, I want to keep my expectations tempered. And that's basically it. I don't have anything else. But yeah, what do you guys think about Tenkaichi 4? Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, we'll see. I'll report on this as more news comes out. So I will talk to you guys later. Peace and have a good night.